We want to help you be the very best missionary so that you can give your very best to the people you're serving. What makes this podcast unique is it's done by missionaries for missionaries. How can we take timeless principles and apply them to our lives as missionaries? That's really our heart behind this. Welcome to this episode of the Modern Day Missionaries podcast. Today, we are so happy to have my good friend, Geoff Whiteman, with us. Geoff is a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Kentucky. He also volunteers as the People Care and Development Track co-leader for the Missionary Leader Conference. And he is the co-author of a new book, which I have right here, called Essentials for People Care and Development. And it is excellent. And Geoff put this together with Heather over at Missionary, and it's actually an edited book. So it's a bunch of different chapters with different member care people in it. And it is really good. So you got to make sure to pick that up. And today we're going to be talking about missional resilience. So we're going to look at the difference between resilience and grit, and how to really receive resilience, how to become a more resilient person. And Geoff has told me, well, I have agreed to it. He did ask so nicely to do a type of intervention or activity in which I have said I will participate without really knowing what we're doing. So you'll want to stay tuned to the whole episode because at some point that's going to happen. And your guess is as good as mine as to what's going to happen. I'm just so excited for everybody to get to know Geoff today. You know, Danny and I have had the pleasure of meeting him and his wife, Chris, on several occasions. And we had him over for dinner last year. And Geoff, we had such a blast having the two of you over. There's still things we're talking about from that dinner conversation. So we are so thankful for your friendship.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about how much just good energy you and Danny bring into the world, and how you love people so well, and it's been really lovely to be a recipient of that. And yeah, so really grateful for you all, and excited to get to hang out with you for a bit today. So yeah.
I feel the same. This is going to be a great conversation. I already know. So one of the things I love about you guys is you and Chris are both completely brilliant. I mean, these two are so educated. Chris just got her doctorate. Geoff has a rich history of education behind him, and as a research director, you guys are so stinking smart. But you're also really funny and fun, and you don't always get that combo. And so you guys are deep thinkers. We can be talking about something crazy in one breath and then be talking about something very profound in the next. And I'm grateful for what you two bring to the world as well.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's let everybody start to get to know you a little bit. For those of you who are listening on audio, what you can't see is that Geoff is wearing his signature bow tie. He's got a look. It's his look. So if you're listening to this, you got to hop over on YouTube and see what Geoff looks like. I feel like that gives even a fuller picture of who you are.
The brand finds you, so.
Right. Okay, this question is not even on my list. How long have you been wearing a bow tie for? When did that become your signature look?
2018, I took a trip to England, and I got like 3 bow ties for Christmas, and I took them with me because the true story here is, like, I used to weigh about 315 pounds, so I weigh like 180 right now, and so ties didn't work well for me, right? Because there was a lot of me, and so that's why I kind of pivoted to the bow tie, and I learned how to tie. A friend of mine taught me how to tie them there in England. I remember like being in the like hostel in York, and learning to tie bow tie, and it kind of stuck. So that's what I do now.
So they are real bow ties, not like the clip kind.
You have one clip one that my son got me for I think like a birthday or Christmas or something. It has like suit on it. I love it. So
when you get a present from a kid, man, I mean, you got to stick with it.
Sometimes, yeah. And sometimes you have to be grateful and let it go. It really depends. So.
Okay, good point. That was a really honest parent statement. I appreciate that. Sometimes it needs to secretly go in the garbage.
Take a
Oh my
picture
gosh.
of it and we'll remember it. So.
Absolutely. Okay, and we'll wrap it up with one book you're reading right now.
Okay, I am reading a really interesting book. Pull it out here. It's gonna be kind of a little nerdy too. Spirituality of the Road by David Bosch. So David Bosch is a South African missiologist. And so he wrote this. This was like lectures that he gave to missionaries. And he took kind of unpacking Second Corinthians as a missionary spirituality sort of like treatise. This was, I think he did this in 78, which was a really kind of a, like a season of upheaval in the world. So I think the kind of, some of his reflections there are important for us today because we're in a similar place. So, yeah,
Oh, that sounds great, and you make a good point. I read a lot of Henry Nouwen, and I some of his books I like best are written kind of in the 70s, and there are things that he'll say in there that feel so applicable today. It's
yeah, yeah,
shocking.
yep.
So
I
that
think
sounds like a
what I
great
like
book.
about, I mean, I'll just kind of say one point about this as a concept is like, I think sometimes we feel as if like we just have to get to this place of like stability in our life, and then everything will be okay. And I think there's something to a spirituality on the road, a spirituality that's like in the midst of the transition and ambiguity and uncertainty,
Yeah.
and how to sort of be in life in that place of weakness and uncertainty, that is important, so it's not like we have to live lives we don't have to retreat.
Love it. Well, and Jeff, you are somebody who not only serves missionaries, but you have a background that connects to
Yeah,
some
yeah,
missions work. Would you love to share about that for a second?
absolutely. So I mean, I got a couple of generations back. For me personally, my parents were in Papua New Guinea till I was about 5. They also in like Solomon Islands and Australia where I was born. So I have like, some of my early like pidgin was my first language, and so, um,
Wow.
yeah, so I don't speak it anymore. And then we lived in Hong Kong and in Singapore when I was in middle school and high school for about a year. So had like a really nice kind of cross cultural expansive vision of the world and the real realities of missionary life on family life. It's part of my experience as well. So yeah, so I kind of come at this um, as someone who's kind of been inside of it.
So this is very personal to you. You grew up being on the mission field.
Yeah.
And then, Jeff, you did a study a number of years ago on missional resilience.
Yes.
And then your wife, Chris, when she was doing her doctorate,
Yeah.
she turned that into her dissertation. Isn't that right? So,
That is right. Yeah. You want me? So I did a real sort of like snapshot of my story is started working in vocational ministry in the year 2000. I was working at a boarding school for naughty kids. And it was there that I like really, actually, that's where me and Chris met. We were both staff.
no
So,
way.
and, I just knew, like, I knew I was called into ministry, but I really was pretty shaky in my confidence on if I could make it. And then fast forward a few years, we got married and we started working in a mission organization for our church. And we saw a lot of attrition there. And I always feel like I needed to qualify. That wasn't because like we came that everyone left. So, but we saw a lot of attrition. And that was where this kind of like this question about resilience came to mind. So God opened up the door for us to come to Asbury to do graduate studies. I did a master's in marriage and family and was teaching in the jail, like some relationship and resiliency classes, and came across this word resilience. And I was like, oh yeah, the people who I knew who were like persevering with joy and were making it, and like they were resilient. And I was like, well, what does this mean? And a lot of this literature was like, I was like, "This isn't it. It's close, but it's not quite it." It was a lot about kind of grit and about toughness, and it wasn't, or like belief in a higher power. And I was like, missionaries don't have a belief in a higher power. It's like it's like a personal relationship with the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's not some
Yeah.
higher power. So, and that's got to be the center of it, not on the like extra side. So, so I put together this study. It launched 7 years ago on my birthday in September. 'Cause you know how you get a bunch of Facebook requests, like,
Yeah.
wishes on your birthday? I was like, "Well, it's almost ready, I'm just gonna do it." So, like, "Hey, thanks for wishing me a happy birthday. Do this study." I was aiming for, like, maybe 100 people to do this survey and get to do interviews with like 10 of them and write a lovely article and move on with my life. And we ended up with like 1,000 responses and like 500 people wanted information about the interviews. I had to pivot to like a written interview. 250 people participated in that. Just about their mean time was like 47 minutes. It produced like 650 pages of just like
Wow.
the most. I mean, I'll read you one quote from it. Just it was like 650 pages of stuff like this. I am not afraid of failure, knowing that even the worst can happen and things can still turn out okay. I know that God has my back and is always there, even when I mess up or bad things happen. I am kinder to others, knowing that they are all facing difficult things. I have more grace with myself. And like that's somebody saying, this is what resilience means to me. Like we have like 650 pages of that. So
My
um,
goodness.
yeah, just like beauty like that. Um, so my wife did like this was really sweet of her. She I got a grant, was able to hire a research team, and had somebody quit, and she stepped in to help on that research team. And it was while she was preparing for her comprehensive exams, which is when you have basically 6 months to read like 80 books that are the canon of your discipline,
Oh
go
my
in for like
gosh.
multi-day sort of like write essay exams. And if you pass or you fail and you're out of the program, it's like a big deal. And in the midst of that, she was like, "Yeah, I'll help." And so she helped. And then in that, she just kind of fell in love with the quotes. And so she um, wrote her dissertation on it. Got it like knocked out last year in the midst of you know pandemic and homeschooling and all kinds of stuff. So I feel like she proved herself to be one of the more resilient people that I know.
And how cool that you guys got to, in essence, collaborate on this. So when we're
Yeah.
talking about resilience today, we're not talking about, um, I should say, as we're talking about resilience, we're talking with someone, you, Geoff, who has put years into this study and research. You've done it. Chris has done it. You grew up on the mission field. This is something that you have experience in and something that you've done massive research in. So you got all these responses back. I mean, a researcher's dream come
Yeah.
true, 1,000 responses. How did you end up defining resilience as a result of all that?
Yeah. So on the research side, this was a grounded theory mixed methods approach. And so what we were doing was I didn't want to like lay here's what resilience is on missionaries. I wanted to listen to missionaries and learn from
Mm,
them. What does it mean for you to be resilient? Who came alongside and helped you in this journey? Like how did you participate in it? So that was the real question, is like listening to their perspective versus trying to sort of like test a definition on them. So
yeah.
yeah.
And what did you learn through their responses?
Um, that's a big. I mean, there's a lot of data. That's a big question. Um, I think if I could boil it down to like, like kind of like the consomme, like the pure, clear essence of it, it would be that we need to receive Jesus' resilience to join him in his mission in this world. And that happens as we turn toward God and others and ourselves for loving support.
Mm.
So that
So
would be
it's a receiving of resilience rather than a mustering up. And you mentioned that earlier, the difference between grit and resilience. What would you say are some of the key differences between the two? Because we do use them interchangeably a lot.
right. So we're Americans. I'm not sure how many other people listening in are going to be Americans. Uh, but like, think about our whole national narrative, from like the pilgrims to, I mean, like the whole thing is about grit. Like our whole
True.
national narrative is about grit. About
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
what we can accomplish, our toughness.
Yeah.
Um, and those, and that's, I mean, we need that. Like, we need to like push through.
Yeah.
We need to push through. The problem is that especially in ministry, especially in cross-cultural ministry, we find ourselves beyond the place, beyond the place where it's like life is not manageable. And you have to live differently in life when it's unmanageable than you do when life is manageable. And it's like all of a sudden, everything in our life kind of begins to fall apart. And you have to be in that space differently. You can't just grit your way through it. And so
Mm.
grit gets us, it gets us far, but it cannot get us across the finish line. So that's where we have to receive Jesus's resilience. So,
And how would you say people can receive Jesus's resilience?
well, so Jesus, I mean, to kind of like, well, what is Jesus' resilience? Is a good question, and how we
That's a better
receive it
place.
is I think like, isn't it the crucifixion and resurrection? We think about, we're like, well, what is bouncing back? What is like, what is resilience? And it's like, well, it's got to be the crucifixion and the resurrection. So Paul says the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is alive in. The same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is alive in. And so when we're talking about receiving Jesus' resilience, we're really asking him for his resurrection life. Will you give to me your resurrection life? Will you give to me your resilience in the measure I need to join you in your mission? Okay.
Mm.
So it's something that we ask for.
And I know you and I talking earlier, you have some things that you're going to mention to even get into that a little bit more. Before we go there, how would you say a missionary's experience of adversity and resilience is unique versus the average person?
It's probably hard to say something about all missionaries because they're not really a monolith. I think something that is
Right.
true for a lot of people in ministry is this. Um, I actually want to talk about that year 5 to 10 range here, because people tend to kind of are able to sort of gird their loins to raise support, to like go to language school, to like get to the field, to kind of like do the adjustment to culture shock and kind of that piece. Um, and then what happens is a couple things. One is, so I have a friend of mine who's they're workers in Egypt and they're language experts. And one of the things she talked about is how, my goal is to learn the language well enough to understand two native speakers having a conversation. Um,
Mm.
and what's interesting is like, I think very few people are able to persevere in language study to that point of being able to understand two native speakers having a conversation. And think about how valuable that is to your own well-being and belonging and bonding to be able to be in a room and understand the conversation happening around you.
Oh, it was a game changer for me. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. The moment you realize you can understand what's going on, it's so exciting and freeing
Yeah. Yeah.
and empowering.
Yeah. And then imagine so there's that piece. And then um, there's a lot of there's a lot of coming and going in missions. And there's not a lot of attention for the most part to the kind of dynamics of the team. And so I think oftentimes teams are sort of expected to function without actually being given the structuring and the time and the care to develop into something that can function. And so it's like, getting mad at your toddler because they can't run. It's like, well,
Yeah.
okay, but they haven't developed that way. They're not there yet. And so people end up, I think a lot of conflict in missions is actually developmental, it doesn't, there's a presumed trust that hasn't been given time to develop. And so people come and go, and there's a point where you're um, like, I just can't keep sharing my heart with people who are coming and going, you know? And it's just like, I'll be
Yeah.
friendly, but I'm not leaning in, you know?
Mm.
And so that happens for people. And then around that year 5 to 10 range, a couple transitions happen for folks. One is they begin to really see that the real fruit takes decades. It just takes decades. It's not like that. They realize that people have come and gone, so they're carrying all of that with them. Oftentimes they're put into positions of leadership, but that they're not equipped for, but they just stuck around long enough, so they're given them. And then their family is shifting. And so what it meant to be 100% sold out to Jesus when you don't have any kids or when your kids are young is very different than what it means to be 100% sold out to Jesus when you have teenagers. Um,
Great point.
or when your parents are aged, and are in
Mm.
need of um more support and help. And so all those, and then we tend to mission a lot of resourcing is done for people kind of to get to the field, but not as much to sort of in that professional development range. So all of those things kind of it kind of so that would be like that range. I'm talking a bit too much about this. I'll just summarize by saying it can be everything all at once, all of a sudden without a clear way out. That we experience in missions in a unique intensity and a unique frequency than we do outside of missions. So
So you're saying between year 5 and 10, you've observed sometimes people will be hit with a tidal wave of adversity, not necessarily from one specific place, but from many different areas of life all colliding together?
yeah, absolutely. So I think that's I think that's an important. I would love to see us be more intentional about people in that range. So,
Mm,
yeah. But
yeah.
I mean, it's true. Kind of that piece is true across the board for people, right?
Yeah. I mean, having teenagers anywhere in the world is maybe not the easiest
Right.
time of life. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Jeff, you told me about the halfway point you wanted to do this. Is it an intervention? I
Let's
mean,
call it an
I'm a little
activity. Can we call it an activity?
acti thank you, that sounds so much better to me. I
Tiffany, we've invited you here today to talk about.
All right, Jeff, you know what? I trust you, otherwise I would be very scared. He's also promised me that I can edit this out.
Yeah.
So if you're hearing me say that, that means we have not edited it
Okay.
out. If you never hear this, then it never happened.
Actually, can I say two other things before we dive into this?
Please do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So the first would be I um I really like so if grit is not a good metaphor for resilience, I think kintsugi is a really beautiful metaphor. And that's just this Japanese, actually I have a piece, you can see it on my thing there. This piece that's been broken. This
Is
piece
it
of
that blue kind of
Yeah.
glass
Okay.
back
Yeah.
there? We're gonna get to see it
So it's like
up close. There it
piece of
is.
pottery that's been broken and it's repaired with gold. Um and it's this beautiful, like, I think that in missions, we need to hold both of those things together. The piece of, like that we come into missions aware of our usefulness and the experience totally breaks us. We've all had that happen where we're just totally broken. Like, man, I do not feel useful to you at all, Lord. And part of it's like lamenting that piece that's true, but then also bearing the hope that actually the piece is more beautiful for having been broken. It's
Hmm.
more precious for having been broken. Uh, Paul says in, I think it's, what is it, Galatians? Ephesians, for we are God's masterpieces, right? Like this
Yes.
kintsugi pot, like masterpieces. And he created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. And when I think about like the good things in my life, they they are the gold that fills the the cracks
Hmm.
and allows me to kind of own you know, those cracks in me now with lament and hope that in the end it will all be well. So
Lament and hope together. Yeah. And
hundreds,
you're right. What is more beautiful than a person who has been through something extremely difficult in life, has lamented well, has grieved well, and has hoped well, and you see him come through on the other side with a story of resilience. It's amazing. Think about the types of movies even that we're drawn to see. Everybody loves an underdog story or a story of someone who's been through a tragedy and comes out on the other side. Because I think that deep inside of us, there's a craving and a desire and a recognition. I want my life to be like that. I want my life to inspire, to have the gold that fills in those cracks, not just be pieces that are still laying on the floor 20 years later. So what a beautiful analogy for people to take forward as they think about resilience.
yes. and to, like, I think I want to kind of yes and to that, and to let the story unfold as it, in the timeline that it's going to unfold in. I think
Well
the
said.
temptation is to just be like, I want to get to the, like, I want to get to the, like, here was this bad thing that happened, and then here was this good thing, and now it's all okay. And and we need to just be okay when it's not okay,
Mhm.
and wait for it to be. So that would, yeah. And I really want to stress how important this might be another thing for another time, how important, like, missionaries are in the, like, stories of resilience, for one another. Like, we often hear that, like, people talk about, like, like, coworkers are like like the number one stressor for missionaries. And it's true. That is true. But coworkers are also the number one support. Now that's what I found, and so,
Yeah.
and it's like the people that we're doing life around and with really matter to us. And so I think there are a lot of people who, um, who have a heart for member care, though they might not have the title for it. And I would really love to see them just step into that vocation and role and calling. And so that might be another topic for another day. But all right.
Mhm.
So anyways, there was two things I wanted to stress. So all right.
Yeah, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
those.
All right. You ready for
Okay, so
our activity?
the moment has arrived. Yes.
All right, great.
Yes, I'm ready.
Great.
Here we
Okay.
go.
So so I have like this is like a maybe 10-page handout, and well, I'll give you a link to people can download it so they get a copy. Okay. And
Awesome.
this is the, like, if you take, like, 100,000 cells of data in that one spreadsheet, and then 650 pages of, like, interviews, and you sort of boil it down to the essence, and then you try to figure out, like, well, how do you live with this? What do you do with it? Because I don't know about you, but, like, I hate stuff that's like, well, here's 17 things you need to do for self-care. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm like, can't even get myself, like, showered. How am I gonna possibly do 17 things for self-care? It's
Right?
yeah,
Okay, so then the purpose in this activity, we're showing this to people so that they can fill in the blank.
this is the real practical missional resilience, like, out of the metaphor and into the, like, what do you do right now?
Okay, so can people do this activity with each other, with
Yeah, I think
themselves?
you can do it I think you can do it yourself. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, 100%. And you could definitely walk somebody through with it too. So, yeah, but this is the, like,
Perfect.
really, like, this is my what have I, counseling missionaries, working through this myself. What do I know, and how does what I know impact what I do?
Okay.
This is the, like, this is the heart of it.
All right.
All right. So, and it's not complicated. So,
Okay.
all right. So it's not, so there's it's pretty simple actually. So a couple of years ago, I'm going to sidestep this with a quick note. The
You
Dutch.
just trying to drag out my what
Oh,
do you
I know.
call
Okay.
it?
I'm sorry. You're feeling
Anticipatory
anxious
stress.
about this, aren't you? All right. Yeah. So here's
No,
what,
I
okay.
you
Yeah.
can say it. You
All
can
right.
say it. I'm totally good.
Okay. All right. So, uh, a breakthrough might be on the other side, Stephanie. You don't know.
Oh my gosh. You're right.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
like 80% of the Netherlands is under sea level. And so, like, climate change is kind of an existential issue, right? And so, culturally, like, the Dutch adopted bicycling, but it created this problem because people would, like, open their car doors and bikes would, like, hit the door, right? And so it would create this kind of, like, it was like this culture shift that created this massive problem. Like, are we going to just build millions of miles of bike lanes? Like, are we
Oh
gonna
wow.
outlaw cars or bikes, or, like, it's like, how do we deal with this complex problem? And their solution, this is great, was to train, it's called the Dutch method. It was to train people to use their opposite hand to open the door. So if you think if you could, like, do this, if you open the door with your opposite hand, you naturally, your head looks behind over your shoulder. You can see if a bike's,
Yes.
and so oftentimes I think the point of that is to say that, like, oftentimes we feel like very complex problems need to have very complex solutions, and it's just not true. Sometimes really simple solutions can actually be a game changer for very complex problems. And so this is my kind of like, hey, let me show you how to look over your shoulder.
I love it. That is a fantastic analogy.
There you go. So, all right. So I
All
want you,
right.
all right,
I'm
we're going to do this
ready.
together. Okay. All right. So we'll do it together.
Okay.
Um, I want you to think about, and you don't have to say what it is. That's not even necessary for this. But I just want you to think
Okay.
about either a current or a recent challenge, difficulty, a place where you're like, "Ah, man, I could use some resilience." It'd probably be best if you're like, I'm gonna break down into tears thinking about this. That's probably not the one for us to work on. So, maybe one that's like, okay, this is real, it's hard, but I can kind of like process it. So,
Got it.
okay. Cool. All right, you got it?
I got
Okay,
it.
me too. So what we're gonna do is real simple. Is we're just gonna kind of get into the heart of what that thing is for us, what it means for us. And so, um, I think I sent you this page, and if you there's an emotions wheel on there. Okay.
Okay. I'll open that up.
And so if you pull that emotions wheel, I just want you to name like two or three emotions that come to mind for you. It doesn't have to be too exact, but what are, what's one, two or three emotions that come to mind when you think about this, like this challenging, difficult thing?
I would say frustrated,
Uh huh.
overwhelmed, and hopeful.
Hopeful. Okay. So, Stephanie, I'm feeling frustrated and overwhelmed and hopeful about this situation. Is that true?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I am feeling, I will go ahead and do this too. I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling vulnerable, and I am feeling, and we want to be encouraged, frustrated. Yeah.
Okay.
So insecure, vulnerable, frustrated. Okay.
And I'm going to add inadequate to mine. I had more time to look at it while you
Okay.
were looking at your emotions wheel. Inadequate. I
Okay.
saw that and I went, yes,
Yep. Good. Good. Good.
for
So,
sure.
um, here's a little. I'm going to just do a little 2 cents on emotions, especially for us as Christians. So imagine, all right. So imagine going to Peru and having like 5 vocab words. How
Yeah,
how
it'd be
how would have
tough.
navigating the context been for you? Hard, right? Impossible.
Really hard.
Yeah. So a lot of us have like 5 vocab words for our emotions, and so we try to
Mm.
navigate our emotional landscape with like, oh, glad, mad, sad, right? It's like, and so that's one piece. And then as Christians, we tend to also, especially, and depending on what our family of origins were like, we can spiritualize emotions so that we have like, if you're angry, it's because you lack faith, or if you're anxious, or if you're angry, it's because you're prideful, or if you are anxious, it's because you lack faith. And we spiritualize our emotion, and we end up having feelings about our feelings. We call that meta emotion. Um, and
Hmm.
uh, and we miss them as the really valuable check engine light that they are for us. And the check engine light for us is actually pointing to our needs. So, and when our needs are fulfilled, we have these emotions that feel more positive. When our needs are threatened, we have emotions that feel more negative, right? And so, all right. So then the next wheel on here is this is really nice. It's like the universal human needs wheel. You see that?
Okay.
Okay.
I do.
Okay. So then I want you to just kind of look at so you can see there's like you can look at all those different needs, and try to kind of maybe come down to one that feels most resonant to you. You can look on the outside and on the inside, but what's the need that's kind of resonant to you?
Oh, that's interesting. And when you say most resonant to me would that be right now? Because I
Well,
feel
kind
like
of
from day to
with that
day or week to
situation,
week
like,
with the
yep,
situation.
with the situation. So,
Yeah. Okay. So I'll read them real quick. Transcendence, rest, empathy, community, safety, subsistence, work, honesty, autonomy, and challenge. When I think about this particular one, Uh, I think the one for me would be community,
Yeah,
which surprises me. I wouldn't have guessed I would
good.
guess that.
If you go into that wheel and look at some of those kind of, anyone in there that stands out especially for you within the community?
Yeah, probably support
Mhm.
and interdependence.
Yeah. Yeah, so Stephanie, I'm seeing in this situation that's bringing up hope, but also overwhelm, and you added one. What was it when you added?
I did. I added
I should have written
inadequate.
inadequate, where I'm feeling inadequate and overwhelmed and threatened, but also hopeful. Really seeing the need for, support and for do you say interdependence?
Yeah,
Interdependence, yeah. Okay. I would yeah. Is that is that resonating with you?
I think so. Yeah, that feels right, especially support.
Mhm. I'd say I'm gonna put 2, I can't separate them in my mind, but I it's security and belonging are the 2
Mm.
needs that really are resonating for me in in the situation I'm thinking about. So, here's a little, like, 2 cents on needs. So if you look at, needs are good. You know, they're God given. And the way that our, like, especially our kind of American ministry context, values self sacrifice, we can make the like sacrificing of our needs something like heroic, in a way that I don't think is God honoring. I don't think is God honoring. And, you know, we see it's interesting to see how Jesus like owns his needs and is concerned about the needs of others. It's really, you know, it's pretty remarkable. And so my observation with people in ministry, especially, is that we tend to kind of get one side of this wheel really good. We tend to get the challenge, autonomy, honesty, work side good. We tend to either get the transcendent or the subsistence good. We're either we're broke and doing meaningful work, or you know we're doing fine and our work's pretty meaningless. So, but and the rest of these are the ones we struggle with: safety, community, empathy, rest. It's also interesting to notice some of the generational shifts that are happening between
True.
kind of like older generations and newer generations around this. But think of the word vitality is in the middle of this chart, and I would put the word shalom there, the reign peace
Mm.
of God at where every need is. And it's so easy to try to sort of drive through life on oblong wheel, right? How easy to it's like it makes for a rocky journey, you know. So, but there's the difficulty is like like for me, it's like easy to lean in on one side and difficult to lean in on the other side. But when I
I would agree with that. When I look at that chart,
yeah
like what I want to say is autonomy. I want to be able to figure this out myself. I want to be able to not need somebody else. I mean, even my personality type,
yeah
I like to be someone who doesn't need other people a lot. And that's also adding to my personality type, as you've
yeah
mentioned, for people who are listening who are North Americans or Americans, especially, I should say. That's a value we hold in this country. And yet, when I look at those needs, what do I actually need? I need probably the opposite of what my tendency would be, and that's community. And that is support. I mean, of all the ones within community, support is the hardest one to say.
yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
I had a really kind of a difficult realization this spring around this very issue, which was I was noticing how like I was feeling pretty like I don't have the support that I need in my life. Um, pretty sizably and pretty distressingly. And I just had this really realization of how like how much joy it brings me when I'm able to like meet the needs of somebody else. And
Mm.
and it was like in a way that I was like, maybe my needs actually aren't mine. Like maybe they exist for somebody else to have that joy of
Wow.
meeting them. And that I need to like not rob people of the opportunity to like be who God created them to be by withholding my vulnerability.
So good.
And I was kind of like,
Some realizations are more fun than
"Uh,
others,
yeah,
Jeff.
I know. All right, good. Okay, so we're having this difficult, and all of a sudden, like now we're having a really different in our for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not talking about the particular situation. We're recognizing these needs for, support, for interdependence, security, belonging. It's different. So then we're going to look at this chart of values next. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, and there might be one or two values that just really stand out to you as you're thinking about this situation and what's really important to you and how you want to how you want to navigate it, how you want to be in it, who you want to be. And
I've looked at values lists before, and it's been to identify my personal values. Probably many people listening have done that, or if you haven't, it's a great exercise to look through a list of values and identify what are your strongest values. But it's an interesting question, Jeff, to consider values in light of this particular issue.
yeah,
And yeah, so I'll mention a value that could kind of give away part of what I'm thinking
sure.
about, but parenting is one. So clearly it's related to one of
Yeah,
my children.
yeah,
So, and I can just say we have a daughter with special needs, so it's related to
yeah,
her. So parenting comes up, I think, along with some of those words, shalom. One of my top values is harmony, and so that shalom piece is something that I crave for us and for her. Security
yeah,
is one that I want for her,
yeah,
and, it's hard to look through these real quickly and find them, but, courage would be something that I'd hope for our
yeah,
family. Inclusion, that she feels a part, and I'm not sure if it's on here, but, something I deeply desire for her is just a strong sense of purpose for her life. I mean, there's his personal fulfillment, maybe that's it, that she has a sense of purpose, for her life outside of simply being taken care of, but making a difference. Oh, there it is, making a difference. That's on the list. Making a difference in her world. So there's some for me. Making a difference, parenting, shalom, security, and whatever else I said.
yeah. I mean, I want to maybe, would it like loving well? Is
Yes.
that it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Loving well. Yeah. Yeah. I think forgiveness is a high value for me in the situation. Um, Stewardship is a pretty high value for me. Yeah, forgiveness, stewardship. When I'm thinking about the situation, those things are really stand out to me. And so we're talking about this, this thing that brings up all this, some emotions we prefer to avoid, right? You know,
Yeah.
and when you get into it, you're like, oh, actually, like these emotions are pointing to some things that are really good and beautiful and matter,
Mm.
in terms of the sort of basement level of needs and the aspirational, like, place of values. And so that becomes prayer, right?
Oh.
So in this situation, I am feeling blank, 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 blank. Got this legitimate need for blank, and blank that feels threatened or unfulfilled. And I'm trying to respond in this situation in a way that honors my values of blank and blank. And so that's the prayer. That's the prayer. So Jesus says, this is so good. He says, like, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name, says in John. And this is the stuff we need to turn to God for and ask for, with our whole heart, for the emotion, the need, the values that we have. And so, why don't we just do that real quick, and then we'll do the next piece. So we'll
Let's
just do it kind of privately to ourselves. But is that fair? So it's real. All right. Okay.
absolutely.
So,
Yes. Men.
all right. Um, so then we need to actually, and this is the hard part, but it's really the good part, is to then be still and let the Lord fight for us. Um, this is like in Exodus when the Israelites are facing like a sea that can't be parted and an army that's bearing down on them. Moses says, uh, "You have only to be still; the Lord will fight for you." Of course, they don't. They can't be still, and we have a hard time doing that too. But that is the call. It's just like take some breaths, be still, let the Lord fight for you. Tend to your own nervous system, and then in that, be mindful, Lord. What can I do in the situation? Who can you send to help? And just be still. It comes to mind. What can I do? Who can help? Let's not do that now for time, but we can do that
Hmm.
afterwards. And then at the end, give thanks. Give thanks. So, and give thanks for the way that God makes a way when there doesn't seem to be a way. We often think about resilience as this kind of like something hard and heavy and big and strong. And it's much more like sort of being on a tightrope. There's just these little adjustments. It's like, oh, here's this little thing that's overwhelming right. Okay, let me pause. Let me get into my heart. Let me figure out what's going on. Let me turn to you, turn to myself, turn to others, find a little bit of support, find the way. Let you make the way, really. So in a way that gives you glory. So, and so that to me is like kind of, when we say, Lord, Jesus, give me your resilience so I can join you in your mission. And then we sort of do this work. I think I don't know, that seems to be really key to how we keep doing this thing that the Lord's given us to do. So
I love the simplicity of that.
yeah, how's that kind of ring for you as an activity?
It feels really good. It's interesting, I think, for people who tend towards autonomy or independence. Sometimes an activity like this it reminds me, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when Naaman went to go see Elisha and was told to go bathe in the Jordan River by his servant. And he was like, That's all? That's all you want me to do? Like, it's just a releasing and it's an asking to receive." And I think sometimes we can approach resilience that way. Like, can I please have something else to do? Like, really just go bathe? Come on. I need something. I need to go lift something or move something. But you mentioned that from the beginning of the conversation, Jeff, and I really appreciate that. It's because I had asked you beforehand, how do we frame this up with resilience? I said, is it something we cultivate? And you said, even more than cultivate, I think it's simply a receiving. And I think it's hard to know how to receive. And this is a really practical and simple way. And we'll post links to all this for somebody to be able to go through it individually. But then to your point, part of the ending of the activity was saying, Lord, who do I talk to about this? Who do I invite in? I think it's important to bring people into our journey because even doing this with you, there was something really beautiful about walking through this together, having someone listen to you. So we can do it on our own, we can do it with somebody else, or we can do it on our own and then share it with somebody else. But I would encourage people, just even based on what I'm feeling right now, don't keep this activity to yourself. Take it a step further by sharing it with
Yeah.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing you're probably feeling a bit better about the situation,
Yeah,
even though
absolutely.
nothing's actually changed about the situation.
But it is because
But
we've
but
invited God
yeah,
in.
and you've yeah. So, I think I would add, if you do this, share this with somebody. What I tried to do with you is just listen well. Be like, tell me, what are you feeling? What are your needs? What are your values? Share that back with you, but out not in a way that tried to take that on or try to fix it, but just like was
Yes.
empathic to it. And so I think when we're able to, like, Sue Johnson says that suffering is inevitable, but suffering alone is intolerable. There's been research with people in hospitals where like a loved one holds their hand and it actually diminishes their pain, their physical pain. And
Mm,
we need to just be willing to like sit and hold one another's hand. And that
yeah,
empathy is the way that we do. It doesn't change anything, but it changes everything. And so I think if you can do this with somebody and be empathic, it's the gift of presence is a real treasure. So that would be my
absolutely.
yeah.
Let
And
the
I think
Holy S
it's a skill, but it's not like not hard. It's not, well,
No, this is accessible.
yeah, 100%. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that people have something now that they can put into practice just to receive, not almost said cultivate again, to just receive resilience in their life from the Lord.
Yeah.
And it is a process of cultivating in the sense that it's a practice. It's something that you do on a regular basis. But it's good to remember that we're not working our way to it, but we're receiving it openly. So
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us about this. I mean, I know you and I, we could probably go a whole nother hour
Yeah.
talking about different facets of this, but this was a solid, good conversation. And so
That's
I'm
good.
just going to leave it here. And we might just have to talk again in the future. That's all I'm saying. We might need to have a part two at some
Yeah.
point. But for now, I'll have links to all of this so that people can walk through these. Just appreciate all you do, the way that you love missionaries, the way that you understand them, the way that you listen to them, the way that you study us so that we can learn more about ourselves. It is a blessing, Geoff.
Well, glory to God. I think I'll just maybe just kind of a final thought is, anything I always feel like it's important to say this. Anything in this that's kind of not for you, just let the Holy Spirit blow it away and don't worry about it. And anything that is, just
Yeah.
receive it. Yeah. So, we just let go whatever's not for you. I think that's important to just add. So, and I really am.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just say something. I'm just really thankful for the chance to spend an hour with you here. That was and yeah, and
Yeah.
thanks for being willing to dive in on activity. That was fun. So,
You made it painless. It wasn't even hard.
yeah,
Great job, Geoff.
that was fun. And yeah, I just kind of reiterating that idea of posture. And there's a posture that's not passive, but is also not sort of like active. That's still there's an activity to it. It's like a. Have you ever seen like a cat that's like perfectly still, but, like, totally alert and awake, and it's kinda, like, on the prowl.
Yes.
It's that kind of, like that's the sort of watchfulness, and as we sort of are able to cultivate that watchfulness in
Mm.
our own hearts and, in the hearts of one another, I think there's something to a way to God's heart in all of that. I really think it really is where the abundant life is found. So, um,
Hmm.
and yeah, alright.
Well, thank you again,
Yeah,
Geoff.
thanks.
Appreciate it so much, and hope everybody know everybody, but I'm also hoping everybody on here was really encouraged by what was shared today. And we will look forward to seeing you on our next episode.